You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. It's a pleasure to be here today. This is your host, Koku. This is our first show for the new year, and it's going to be a good show because we're going to simulcast with our sister show on the KWAZ Radio Podcast Network. Joining us will be Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective. And today's show, we want to talk about, we want to reference some things that are going on in the Black conscious community, but we want to talk about it in a historical sense, too. Oni, welcome to the show.
Oh, yes. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, man. I'm glad to have you here. Your show's been killing it, too, man. A lot of people have been taking a listen, and they like what they hear. So let's keep doing that, man. Also,
yeah, I'm grateful for everybody.
Yes. Also, we have the Bitter Medicine Podcast Think Tank, a WhatsApp group. Go over to the Bitter Medicine Facebook page, and you will find the link to the WhatsApp group. We invite all those people who are builders, who are intellects, who are engineers of thought, and let's come together and let's discuss what we can do in the physical form to uplift our people. Oni, so what's been going on these days? What is it that you feel we should be discussing?
Well, I want to discuss all the problems that we face as a people. But recently, I'm looking into, the political systems that we should, as a people, like what we need to aspire to, like what Pan-African nationalism means, what does nationhood means, and what are the responsibilities of nationals, if you will. I think it was John Henry Clark who said, we can't keep talking about it's nation time if we're not talking about the responsibilities of running a nation. So, things like how to select a leader, whether that be, democratically or, through, gerontocracy or whatever. And then also, what are the qualities of a leader, or what is leadership? These are the kind of things that I want to, address, so our people can, get a firmer grasp of, what nationalism is, because at the end of the day, we're not really, like the dialogue on that is falling short for, in terms of getting our people to understand what we need to do, or what Marcus Garvey wanted us to do,
Well, you called a great name, and the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. What did Garvey say about leadership or about nation building that's not evident today, that's not being practiced as a people today? Because it seems to me that in Garvey's time, between Garvey's time and the Civil Rights Movement, people kind of understood a nation a little bit. Talk about what do you see that's missing?
I can almost say everything's missing, like everything's missing. Marcus Garvey started off reading Booker T. Washington's Up from Slavery, where Booker T. Washington describes, outlines how he built a school, from the ground up, right? And Marcus Garvey, after he read that, he said, where is the black man's president? Where is the black man's, senators? Where is the black man's, kings and queens, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, because he doesn't see any, he will build them. And so this was, almost a century ago.
Mm-hmm.
But to this day, we still don't have that president. We still don't have that senator. We still don't have that governor. And that right there is like one of the bigger flaws, of our people, and one of the bigger flaws of why we're so lacking in leadership in many cases. And I say this because like just to do a personal story. When I was younger, a friend and I, we like to be, more politically savvy than, like our peers or whatever. And we had dreams of, doing, some sort of reform in our communities. And this was like, when we were, still thinking naive and young and,
mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word, white, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we want to do some transformations in the community. So we're thinking, I was saying I want to be a senator or something. And he was saying he wants to be a congressman or something like that, But the evident thing was that it's clear and evident that if you want to improve white society, or if you want to do something in the white community, you can just run for an office. They have an election process, and of course you have to go through a whole Democratic Party and all that, yada yada. But the reality, Republican Party, whatever. But the whole thing is that there's a clear selection process for white leaders, and able to get power in order to do stuff in the community. But then when it comes to but like when I said no, I'm not going to go that route. I want to do something for black people, or if anybody says I want to do something for black people, there is no selection process.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody, exactly. So nobody, like nobody is selected as a leader today. You know what I mean? Like maybe in Marcus Garvey's time, he had the UNIA, which he had to build, and they, had their selection and election process for, provisional governors and so on and so forth. But today, although the UNIA still exists, and they might still have those same titles, if you will, but realistically, as far as like us as a people, in general, we don't recognize any leaders, and we don't recognize any selection process for leaders. And in that way, it's like, even if you wanted to do something good for black people, there's no bottom. There's no selection process. There's no vetting. It's just, go out and do something,
mm-hmm.
and that's just not enough, because, there's a lot more that comes to leadership and leaders, and we're not even practicing the rudiments, if you will.
So I once heard that in times of old in Africa that in a lot of the tribes the women chose the leaders. Have you ever heard that before?
I mean, I saw a video. I heard something similar to that. I hear that there's a lot of ways to interpret it, and of course, there's a whole bunch of practices all over Africa. But so maybe some of them might say that, some of them might not. But I'm not too familiar with that particular, because it varies, from different, groups, how leaders are chosen. But that would be one method. You know what I mean? Like that would be one method of many. But that's one more method than that we have. That's one more method than we have. You know what I mean?
Right. That's exactly the point I was getting at. At least there was some vetting.
Exactly. At least there was something,
Right. There was something. There was some counsel. There was something. But now,
exactly,
there's nothing. What happens now is people self-proclaim.
Exactly.
To be leaders. And really,
exactly,
what I see going on in the black community is we follow entertainers.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's what we do. In the civil rights movement, a lot of those guys back in the day, they had the understanding to say, hey, what group looks to a trumpet player to be your spokesperson or your leader. You know,
Exactly.
what other group looks at the comedians, for example, to be a leader or a voice for the whole people? Like, we're the only group I see doing that. And the dominant and the so-called dominant society, or I call the society with the inferiority complex, they never, you know, even when they do have some of their people become leaders who used to be actors or comedians or whatever, they downplay that stuff. They distance themselves from that past. But we actively seek it out, and of course, the so-called dominant society pushes it on us. You know, Dave Chappelle had a great joke years ago where he said, you know, who are the people who's looking to ask Ja Rule what he thinks about what's going on currently in society? Like, who's making that decision? And that's something that they push on us as well. They push entertainers on us, and we accept it. So what can we do? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. You know, what can we do? And that's you know, that's the trouble though. It's like we as a people, you know, and actually, I want to go back to, you know, like I said, I collected these proverbs, and I put them in a book. But one of the quotes, one of the references, is from this thing called the General Rules of Warfare. You know, and this is just rules. Like these are like, we as a people should understand how war is done and how war is won. But one of the troubles with us as a people is not understanding this particular rule. And I'm gonna pull it up very, very quickly. Let's see, disorder. Oh yeah, okay. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So one of the quotes I put in my book is from the General Rules of Warfare, and the General Rules of Warfare, you know, tell us how wars are done and how wars are won. You know, and one of the quotes is in the battle, never use a company for some other purpose than what you have assigned it to, unless you want to cause disorder. You know, and so what we have in our community is we have people who we assign to do more than they can do, or more than they should do. You know, and I'm actually part of the reason too is because of how bad our economy is. You know, like how bad our economics is. Because our economics are so bad that, like, our people, like I said, our people have to do marketing on their own, you know? And part of that marketing is kind of overstepping your expertise, you know, overstepping your bounds. You know what I mean? Like, commenting on things that, you know, that you probably shouldn't be commenting on, you know? Only because you have to be commenting all the time, right? But when I say that, you know, you shouldn't, you know, you overstep. You know, if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, right, in a battle, right, you're going to cause disorder for everybody else. You know, and that's the thing with a lot of the people that are in the limelight, in the sense that you know, because they have to market for themselves, they go and do more than they have to, you know? So take, for example, these two, you know, black women who are paid by white people, right? Iyanla Vanzant, right? It's like a quote-unquote psychologist, right? Or whatever, right? And then Ava DuVernay is a filmmaker, right? So as a filmmaker, Ava DuVernay doesn't really, and because she's paid by white people, she has good money, right? She doesn't need to comment on anything, any of the latest whatever. She doesn't have to say any of that because white people have her back. You know what I mean? And Iyanla Vanzant doesn't have to overstep her psychology. She doesn't have to go into sociology. She doesn't have to go into philosophy. She doesn't have to go into, you know, she doesn't have to, you know, discuss, you know, public education. She doesn't have to, no, because she already got her stick. You know, her stick, white people want her to do that. They pay her good money for it. She's good, right?
Yeah.
But then you take it, for example, what happened recently, in, amongst, a filmmaker named Tariq Nasheed, filmmaker, author, all that kind of stuff. But he's a filmmaker, and then a psychologist, Umar Johnson. They don't get white dollars, and because they don't get white dollars, they have to do more. They have to go above and beyond their calling, if you will.
Right.
Like he doesn't. You don't just practice psychology if you're Umar Johnson. You also have to, let's say star in a film, or you have to, go on tour and on speaking engagements, go on so on and so forth, and you have to discuss, interracial relationships. You got to discuss LGBTQ, all that, because, you have to market yourself.
Right.
You're not getting money like other people are. You're not getting money like Ava DuVernay and Iyanla Vanzant. So if those two people were to get into a quarrel or into a fight, it would be, it wouldn't make any sense, unless white people wanted them to, because they have what they have. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like with regard to our people, but that's also part of the problem, in the sense of, when because everybody has to, like, if you're in this game, if you will, or if you're in this field, or if you're in this struggle, whatever you want to call it, if you're in this, you have to ask yourself, how are you going to eat at night?
Yes.
And what do you need to do to eat at night? And a lot of people, unfortunately, it comes down to, well, I might have to cause disorder,
Right.
I might have to overstep what I'm, what I want to do in order so that I could eat,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that right there is the problem that, we as a people, we as a community are not solving, because, again, we don't have a structure to put up leadership. And then if we do put up leadership, we don't have the apparatus to finance that leadership, And if you're not going to pay your leaders, someone else will, or someone else can.
Yeah.
And actually, that happened with Al Sharpton.
Yeah.
A lot of people like I got some inside, well, not too inside information, but from what I understand, Al Sharpton was a part of two organizations, the United African Movement and National Action Network, and he was getting a pretty penny, running the as the president of the United African Movement. The chairman made sure he got a pretty penny, but a lot of people, like a lot of outside, a lot of other people would always offer him money, like real money, not white wealth, not black wealth, white wealth,
Right. Mm-hmm.
They offer him a real money to, go against his people. And I mean, for a moment, the chairman of the UAM, Alton Maddox, would dissuade him from, or stop him from doing that. But eventually, the money won, but that's the situation that we have, our community. And I think, if we're going to talk about, poor examples of leaders, like Al Sharpton should be like the highlight, although he doesn't seem as relevant today as he was, years ago. But that right there is like what's going on with our people, where we're not organizing to keep our, to have leaders, let alone to keep them. And, and then we're kind of stuck in a state where we have no real leadership. And some of us, there's another proverb that I have which is, men need images, and lacking them, they invent idols. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So our people need images, but lacking them, we will put up something, and they were just saying that, and the way the proverb ends is that it's better to it's better to have the idol that leads you to the true, that leads the seeker to the true source. You know, so if you're gonna have a false image, right, of what it's better for that false image to lead you to a true one. You know, that's the purpose for a false image, and that's really like where we're at. Because for what it's worth, like Ta-Nehisi Coates apparently wrote, about how Obama was, befitting the eulogy of Malcolm X, which was, he's a black, a black manhood and a black shining prince.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way how I look at it, because a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people took it out of context. And the way how I look at it is that, if you're in Ta-Nehisi Coates' world, which is not too removed from this white world or this, the mainstream white world, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're from that world, looking at Obama as a symbol of manhood, when, in the context of, Lil Wayne's and little whoever, just any little person, right? In the context of that, you would look at Obama as a man, right? But the trouble is, like, you go back to the ancient proverb, are you leading people to the true source of what black manhood is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, you know what I mean? But if you compare Obama to Lil Wayne or something, you might be like, well, I mean, Obama's a better looking example. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe
you're not comparing it to much.
Huh?
You're not comparing it to very much. I mean,
exactly. I mean, maybe Obama has a lot more body, has a bigger body count than Lil Wayne, sure.
Right.
But I mean, Lil Wayne, you just, you just can't even, like it's not, you just, like he don't even got to do bad things. You're just not gonna raise him up,
Yeah. Let's pause for a quick station ID. On the other side of station ID, I want to talk about something in your book, The Pro-Black Compendium. I reached up to page 186, and I want to discuss the principles of virtues, among other things, okay? So right on the other side of this bump, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio. This is your host, Koku, and joining me in today's show is the author of the Pro-Black Compendium, Oni. He's also the host of the Pro-Black Perspective. Oni, we've been talking about leadership, or the lack thereof of leadership in the black community. And we've been talking about some of the reasons that cause that to occur. And we touched briefly on Tariq Nasheed and Dr. Umar Johnson and stuff like that, which, it makes no sense to kind of talk around it, because right now we're seeing so much beefing, kind of hip-hop style beefing going on in the conscious community. And it's not just even right now. It's been going on for a little while now, because it seems like beef means money to a lot of people. It means more visibility, etc. And so a lot of times it seems to me these beefs come up to kind of boost these folks' career and stuff like that. And a lot of these folks don't follow really any principles of virtue. And in your book, you talk about the principles of virtue on page 185. And I thought it was interesting. I'm just going to read some of them out. It says the initiate must, number 1, have self-control in thoughts. Number 2, have self-control in actions. Number 3, have devotion of purpose. Number 4, have faith in the ability of a master to teach the truth. And number 5, have faith in self to assimilate the truth. And now there's 5 other points, but I just want to focus on those 5 for now, because I look at a lot of the people out there, especially in this recent set of conscious beefs. And it seems like the people lack self-control in their thoughts, their actions, and frankly, they don't seem to have a lot of devotion of purpose.
Yeah.
Unless the purpose is to make money. So let's not beat around the bush. I'm going to say my little piece on this right now, and then we'll hear from you. What I've been noticing in the black community in terms of its more visible voices, the Tariq Nasheeds, the Umar Johnsons, the Boyce Watkins, those types of guys, I've noticed that they seem to be doing business. It's not so much about the upliftment is the Trojan horse, so to speak. That's the thing that everyone sees coming, but behind it or inside of it, within it, to me, it's a hustle, to be honest. And I'll say this: one of the things that got me into podcasting is I used to watch Dr. Boyce Watkins all the time. I used to be happy to see his videos come up on YouTube. I thought he used to drop a lot of good, as you would say, black solutions for the black problem from an economic standpoint. And then when I started to see that he started to become more familiar with or clicked in with some of the other guys like Tariq Nasheed, Zaza Ali, people like that, Dame Dash, I started noticing, especially when he started to do more stuff with Tariq Nasheed, I started noticing that everything became a sale. There was no real solutions being given. It was selling of products. And frankly, when I look at the products are anything that you can find online. The information and stuff that you can access. And I noticed the same thing before that with Tariq Nasheed. To me, the thing about Tariq Nasheed is that he's an entertainer. And our people, we don't reconcile that very well. He's an entertainer. He has the gift of gab. That's what the whole art of macking is about. And while a guy like him might be doing some nice things, like he packaged together the hidden colors stuff, but to be fair, a lot of that information was out there already. There's guys on street corners right now in Manhattan saying a lot of that stuff right now. But, our people, we fall for it. We like the dance. We like we like that kind of thing, the flair, right? And, so eventually I think, even though in some of these cases, some of these guys may have began earnestly trying to do something for the people, in some of these cases, like Dr. Johnson, I think eventually they become corrupted. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about previously, where you start to get into that world and you realize that there's a dollar that could be made. And white society is not giving you the dollar, so you're going to get it from black society. You're going to be more than what you really should be, right? Your scope and your focus is going to expand from being a psychologist to being a guy who appears in documentaries and does the lecture series and touring to do lectures and all this kind of stuff. So you become like this rock star eventually. And I think that's what screws a lot of these folks who a lot of us would look at as be leaders, but in reality they're not really leaders, they're more so entertainers. They lack the virtues of what a leader should be, really. They more so have the virtues of what an entertainer should be. So when I was reading through your book recently, I came across those 10 principles, 5 of which I read. The other ones are have faith in self to wield the truth, be free from resentment under the experience of persecution, be free from resentment under experience of wrong, cultivate the ability to distinguish between right and wrong, cultivate the ability to distinguish between the real and the unreal. In other words, have a sense of values. So can you talk about the 10 principles of virtues that you wrote about in context of what's actually going on right now in the so-called conscious community?
Okay, so I mean that was a very good. I mean that was actually instrumental, for this conversation. When we talk about, I just want to just backtrack a little bit from where these 10 principles are from. So George James wrote the book Stolen Legacy, and that was about how ancient Greek philosophy is a stolen, philosophy from Kemet, right? And it's a really wonderful thesis, really well researched, and I think they killed him a year later because of what was in it. But basically, these 10 principles of virtue were what he got from the walls of Kemet, pretty much, from the scrolls of Kemet. So these were the 10 principles that a student in Kemet who was to eventually become either a scholar, a scribe, or even a leader, a priest or so sort. These are the principles that they had to have before they even went into the in-depth books. And that's why, in my book, I preface, an African curriculum with these 10 principles. As I say, these are the 10 principles that we need to know. But like you said, in that list are principles that apply to these people in the quote unquote conscious community. And it kind of shows that they haven't gone through, like, it shows why we need to vet our own leadership or even develop our own leadership, because these are principles that leaders have had in Africa from time immemorial, but we no longer have,
Mm-hmm.
So, but one of the most important ones I could say is be free from resentment under the experience of persecution, and be free from resentment under the experience of wrong. And realistically speaking, the feud, as far as I can tell, between Tariq Nasheed and Umar Johnson relates to those two. As I say, they don't feel free from the experience of wrong. Oh, they're not balanced in that way, where they're like, hey, this person wronged me, and it's cool. It's okay. I'm with my eye. I'm balanced. I know my truth.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So like regarding Umar Johnson, the way how I see it is apparently, he had his, he went through this delicensing kind of thing, or just taking away his certificate, or something along those lines, and so Tariq Nasheed releases a video where he kind of says, just charge. You might be not. He's not really necessarily. Umar Johnson is not really transparent with the money, and you might not see that money. You might not see the school. Just charge it to the game, kind of thing, kind of like that. But that in and of itself, someone else, was claiming that they sent Umar Johnson a video where they interpreted and explained that to him, that was like an insult to Umar Johnson. But realistically speaking, it kind of is, because I've been in that context myself, where it's like, you expect your brother to have your back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, ancient proverb, African proverb goes, hold a true friend with both hands. You expect your brother to have your back, and it's really betraying if, let's say, if Umar is honest, for his brother to, say, oh, I don't know if he's honest. That's one of the few people that shouldn't turn against you.
Right.
You expect everybody else to turn against you from outside, but that shouldn't. But that no. And but at the same time, it's like you said. Go back to the virtues. Be free from the resentment under the experience of persecution, and be free from resentment under the experience of wrong. Umar got resentful. and then he did something that you also shouldn't do, which is, you know, threaten to fight, you know, another man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the reality is that, you know, because like I said, I also, you know, I wrote an article about how we kind of owe, you know, these people an apology, but what I said in this article was, you know, I when I was you know, recently married or whatever, like my uncle-in-law, you know, came up to me, you know, really drunk, and he was like, you better watch what you know, just pretty much like, you better be good to my niece, otherwise I'm gonna come over and beat you up, you know. And I'm, you know, of course, for like a split second, I'm thinking I should whoop this guy in front of his whole family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But instead, you know, I'm a virtuous guy sometimes, right? You know? And so I just say, you know, okay, whatever, sure. You know, because I mean, I wasn't even thinking about, you know, harming a woman anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the reality is that when somebody threatens you, you do, like, you feel it. You know, like, especially as a man, you feel it, and you feel, you know, so it's like for the most part, you know, something rises in you. You know, just like if somebody slaps, like if a man gets slapped, he like sometimes he could get uncontrollably angry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like so and that's what I kind of saw in Tariq Nasheed's video, because I saw like maybe 10 minutes of his video, but I couldn't tolerate it because of, you know, how much he used the N-word. But I saw like an anger. You know, I saw kind of a, you know, if you will, a hit him up, you know, from Tupac. You know.
Yeah.
But without the beat and, you know, without the rhymes, but I saw an anger, you know, like, don't threaten me, you know, or if you threaten me, come on, let's fight. But it's like, but that's to be expected, you know, because if you handle things with anger, you will bring about more anger,
yes.
You know, and that's something that Umar, like, probably didn't pick up on. So one thing that I saw from that feud, if you will, was this lack of being like they weren't free from resentment, you know, from experiencing resentment, you know, for either persecution or experienced wrongs, you know, and for that, like you said, you know, they don't show themselves to be virtuous, you know, and but to Tariq's credit, you know, he apparently he said, I'm not a leader of the conscious community, and he also, you know, tags this stuff as, I'm being petty, you know, yeah, I'm petty, you know. And apparently he has a history of being petty and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know, to his credit, it's like, hey, maybe, you know, he should have never really, like, I never even thought of him in the light of, you know, hey, this is a black leader, a black conscious leader. You know, for the most part, I just thought, hey, maybe it was a guy who taught, you know, macking and who also, you know, produced the film, you know,
right.
Like produced some good films, you know what I mean? Like, right. Maybe I would put him as a filmmaker, probably put him as, you know, on the level with, you know, some of those white filmmakers, like George Lucas or something. You know, like, I wouldn't necessarily put George, like, nobody's going to George Lucas and saying, you know, you're the leader of the white community. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're just saying you made a good film or something. You know, you know what I mean? But the same with Tariq Nasheed. I mean, Umar Johnson is different in the sense of he is saying, hey, I'm the prince. You know, I'm the prince of Pan-Africanism and I'm all that. And so for him, you know, you might want to, but then he also apparently doesn't exhibit, you know, great characteristics or a great character, you know.
Yes.
And that right there is like, you know, another thing. But of course, it, like I said, it ties back to this reality that, you know, anybody who wants to be like this whole idea of leadership, but which is great, but it's like, where in the world does a leader just announce themselves? You know what I mean? Where in the world, you know, there's an African proverb that says, if you're a leader, you know, if you're a leader with nobody following them, is just taking a walk, you know. and that's the thing with our people. Now, unfortunately, you know, these people do have followers. They do have, you know, cult following, if you will. But the reality is, but there's more to it too. Because I want to emphasize to people too that leadership, you know, kind of stresses an organization, you know, like Marcus Garvey is not the leader of, I mean, he's technically the president of, he technically was the leader of black people, but only because UNIA enabled that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But really, he was the leader of the UNIA. Or Du Bois wasn't the leader of black people, but he was one of the leaders of the NAACP. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, and like, and you go down the list. Martin Luther King Jr. was SCLC. Kwame Ture, SNCC, or Stokely Carmichael SNCC. Malcolm X was the spokesman for the Nation of Islam. Down the list. These people were not necessarily the leaders of black people, but they were prominent figures in huge black organizations. And the reality is that Umar Johnson is not really a prominent figure in a huge black organization. He's just a man with he's just a man who, he's an orator.
Right.
And that's about it. I mean, and not to say that an orator is not anything significant. It's just that we didn't really select him. There was no selection for him. He's just a really good speaker who featured on a good film and who took to walking around on it. But it's kind of like like you bring up George Lucas. Apparently he was like Star Wars or something, and then the guy who played the leader, the main character of Star Wars, he can go around the world saying he's whatever, but it doesn't make any sense. It's just film, they're just film stars and filmmakers,
Yes. Now you made this point on Twitter about leaders previously coming up through organizations. By the way, give everyone your Twitter handle.
Oh yeah, my Twitter handle is Onitaset, ONITASET. That's actually it. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys can follow Oni on Twitter, and he drops a lot of jewels on a daily basis. And recently, you did talk about how in the past, and I thought this was a brilliant point. Our leaders, or our most vocal, usually came up through the ranks. So that was kind of their vetting process. They came up through the ranks of various organizations.
Exactly. Yeah.
Drew Ali, Malcolm X, etc. And I think that's important to note that, what organizations do we have now that has a talent pool that we could potentially, derive the proper voices that we need in the community?
And that's like the fundamental question. Like I was saying, I think it was either Kwame Ture or Malcolm X who said that they were never not in an organization. Like after for instance, for Malcolm X, he was, it could have been Kwame Ture quoting Malcolm X and saying that he believes the same thing. But the thing with Malcolm X was that after the Nation of Islam, he immediately went to the Organization of African American Unity. And then of course he passed away. He was assassinated, right? And then, but Kwame Ture is same with that. After SNCC, he goes to the All African Revolutionary People's Party, right? And keeps working on that. And he was saying that if there's not an organization out there for you, then you should make one. And that's something that I did. I was trying to I was giving people a template for making their own organization or their own chapter of the organization. But the reality is that there are, and there are organizations out there. There's a website that is devoted to, you finding your own organization and a whole bunch of things. But one of the things that I had, because like I said, I had to make my own organization. But the reason being is because we also have to realize that when we talk about organizations, we also have to talk about ideology, because there are big organizations, there are big black organizations with ideologies that just don't sync with us,
Right.
But then there's also organizations, and there might even be organizations that just don't have enough meeting times, like meetups, So you have, like for instance, the Uhuru movement, but it's like a socialist organization, And then you have Black Lives Matter, but that's like a, integrationist, idea, And then I think they had,
Yeah, it's a kind of integrationist, intersectionality type group.
Exactly, so it's like, but I'm not to say that, if somebody is interested, and the reality is that if that were if that was your thing, then go for it. Sure. I mean, I wouldn't, but go for it. But it's better than not doing anything, because a lot of people should prefer to say, hey, you know what? These guys are socialists. I don't want them. These guys are, this. I don't want them. Black unification. I don't know. They're not too active. Blah blah blah. And then or the Pan-African, whatever. And then they say, I'll just not do anything. And that's like the worst thing that you can do as a people. And I say this because like I want to emphasize to people, when you talk about martial arts, just regular, or Manchu arts, whatever, right? When you talk about just regular fighting, hand to hand, fist to fist, if you can fight two men at the same time, right, you're probably a pretty good fighter. Right. If you could fight three men at the same time, then you're like, you're probably you're top tier. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And if you can fight more than three men, then like you probably don't belong on this earth. You know what I'm saying? like you seem like you might be a superhuman. But the thing is that those are just small ratios. Those are like the smallest ratios you can find. It's like one-on-one, sure. Because one-on-one, you got to look at this person. But when the other people outnumber you, it's really, really difficult.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But then here we are, like I said, here we are. We're trying to do one of the most impossible feats on the planet. Not impossible, but like one of the hardest feats on the planet, liberating a really downtrodden people. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to do it against one of the strongest people, if you will, or one of the most ferocious and savage people on the planet. Right? And then then we're saying, let's do it alone. Let's do it one versus a million.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, but that one versus a million only works on like a Rambo movie or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
It doesn't. It's not fantasy. It's not realistic. If you're gonna, I would tell somebody like let's say you and I, if we wanted to beat up, you and I wanted to beat up a whole building, right? A whole building of people, right? We could. As long as those people came at us one at a time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As long as they came at us one at a time. But that's what we're doing. We're unorganized. We're disorganized. And so we go after these, our enemies one at a time. And they don't even have to outnumber us heavily. But here we are, I'm familiar with the NYPD, You never see the NYPD by themselves, like a police officer by himself.
Never.
And you never even see a squad. Like if you see two police officers, there's also two around the corner.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because they understand how to place themselves, how to organize themselves, how to so on and so forth. But the thing is that when they're going against us, we're just one at a time. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So earlier today in our think tank group, we had a little bit of a discussion, the group did, and Oni was one of the voices, and we were talking about leadership and how I think I mentioned in black society, we tend to have one leader at a time, one chosen Negro at a time. And that's the easiest way to have any kind of movement on the back of one person, just destroy it. Because all you got to do is take out the one person. We need to learn how to have backups and backups to the backup, and to all take a share in leadership. And when we talk about leadership, this show and your show, the Pro-Black Perspective, we're Pan-African nationalists, and in your book on page 184, you talked about the 7 qualifications of a Pan-African nationalist. And I think this is important. I think this is something that anyone who's listening to this, who's trying to find their direction, trying to find their center in terms of the work that we need to do, like Oni said, this impossible or damn near impossible or seemingly impossible feat of getting the oppressors up off of us, right? I think these are some things you should consider when either joining a conscious group, or even if you're going to create a conscious group, or even if you just want to be a solo act who who's on code, because that's something that we're not on. We're not on code in particular. Like you said earlier in the think tank group, even the KKK has a code: kill niggas.
Exactly.
Right? So
that's it, man.
right. So we need to be on code. But something you said on page 184, I'm just going to read the 7 points off. So bear with me for a second. It says the 7 qualifications of a Pan-African nationalist: a conviction that African should be the sole leaders of African people in Africa and the diaspora; a resolve against dependency. Number 2, a conviction that Africans should have social settings free of Eurasians and Eurasian ideas; a resolve against integration. 3, a conviction that Africans should be able and willing to produce everything they are able and willing to consume. That's a resolve against impoverishment. Number 4, a conviction that African leaders and liberators need to be developed through time and struggle. A resolve against impatience. And I think that's a very, very deep one and very necessary right now. Number 5, a conviction that Africans should be about race first and race only. That's a resolve against individualism. Number 6, a conviction that African sexuality is strictly between an African man and African woman, and that is a resolve against imbalance. And then lastly, number 7, but not least, a conviction that Africans should solely adhere to African spiritual systems. That's a resolve against mimicry. Now, we're going to pause here now to do a quick station break, and on the other end, we're going to talk about these 7 qualifications, how it relates to somewhat to what's going on in this conscious beef foolishness, but really we want to talk about it in the sense of self-determination going forward. So let's go to the station break, and we'll talk about this on the other end.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAC Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Thanks, everyone, for joining the show today. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Bitter Medicine Podcast and the Pro-Black Perspective. We're doing a joint podcast today. Right now, we're discussing the qualifications of being a Pan-African nationalist. And we're talking about these things in respects to what's going on in the black community in terms of our leadership or lack thereof, in terms of there not being proper vetting of so-called leaders. And in fact, because our leaders today haven't gone through the rigors or passed through the ranks of any particular organization. They've just kind of appeared to us in documentaries or social media and stuff like that. So we want to, the idea that Oni and I have in today's show is to really talk about what we can do to start building stronger resolve in the black community so that we can have a better crop of leaders in the future. And I say leaders with an S, as in plural, because we need to get away from this model of just having the one leader at a time who's killed off, who's bought off, who's paid off, or what have you, and then everything remains stagnant or goes back decades. So Oni, welcome back. Let's talk about the Pan-African Nationalists and the lack thereof of the Pan-African ideology in our leadership. When I listen to some of these guys, some of these, the louder voices in the black community, one of the things that irks me heavily is the usage of the N-word, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
To me, by using that term, you don't understand the plight, and you are doing the work of someone else, not the work of your own people.
Exactly.
I've listened to guys over the years come up with fantastical stories of the origin of the N-word and how using the N-word is a good thing because it's the oppressor who changed the meaning and the scope, because the word comes from Negas, which in Ethiopia stands for king, right? Now, my thing about it is, if the word really came from Negas, just say Negas.
Exactly.
How about we just say Negas and not say the N-word, right? So let's kind of hammer down on the Pan-African nationalist thinking. And that really should be our code, right? Just like how the KKK has the code to kill niggas, that should be our code. These 7 qualifications is what we should be adhering to. And I like how you broke it down where after each code you have like a line, a byline, a resolve against dependency, a resolve against integration, a resolve against impoverishment, a resolve against impatience. And that's the one that we've been talking about a lot today, and we're going to continue talking about. A resolve against individualism, a resolve against imbalance, and a resolve against mimicry. When you talk about the resolve against impatience, isn't that really what the black community does, though? Isn't that what we do when we talk about these so-called leaders in the black community? Isn't that really an impatience where we anoint or crown these people as leader, but we never vetted them, we never put them through, they never worked their way through an organization, they never really did any works that's in their history that we could draw from? You know, you talked about Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael. Like, that gentleman unfortunately died in poverty and sick and stuff like that, but that gentleman was putting in work.
Exactly.
Before he became a known name, he was putting in work. In high school, I was reading about him some time ago. In high school, he was putting in work.
Exactly.
You know, so how do we get our people to have the resolve against impatience?
Well, that's the thing right there. Like you said, you know, Marcus Garvey is probably the go-to, you know, because he would talk about quote-unquote Negro leadership, you know, or black leadership, you know, during his time. You know, the word was Negro back then, right? But during his time, he would talk about leadership, and some of the things that he said, and some of the problems in our ancestral past. Like I said, I decided to include a lot of these in the book because I know that our ancestors could educate us. It can inform us. But one thing Marcus Garvey says is, you must not mistake lip service and noise for bravery and service. You know, and I think our ancestors, if I can remember this one correctly, you know, they were saying, let's see, let me see what they said. Hold on a second. He says, boasting at home, no, our ancestors say, boasting at home is not valor. Parade is not battle. When war comes, the brave will be known, you know? And so, you know, they both, you know, Marcus Garvey and, you know, our other ancestors, you know, kind of, you know, mirror each other in the sense of they're saying, you know, service, you know, lip service, you know, they're saying lip service and noise should not be mistaken for bravery and service, but also, you know, people can both during a parade, during a march, you know, oh, look up, but it's not the same as on the battlefield, you know. And the reality is that, like you pointed out, Stokely Carmichael, you know, sacrificed. You know, he did service for his people. Yeah. He was doing for us, you know. But like if we're going to talk about Tariq Nasheed and Umar Johnson, you know, I think they're good individuals, no doubt, but. You know, it's more like, you know, celebrity from a film, you know?
Yeah.
You know, celebrity from a Hidden Colors, and then eventually, you know, out of nowhere, apparently, you know, one of them is the leader of black people. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, it's like, you know, you just woke up one morning and you were like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, you know.
Yeah.
But the reality is that is noise. You know, it's lip service and noise.
Yeah.
You know, one of the quotes I actually like, and I just want to, you know, I don't want to touch on too much of these, but one of them I really like was from Carter G. Woodson, where he says, and this one's really important. He says, if the African could abandon the idea of leadership and instead stimulate a larger number of the race to take up definite tasks and sacrifice their time and energy in doing these things efficiently, the race might accomplish something. The race needs workers, not leaders. Such workers will solve the problem which race leaders talk about and raise money to enable them to talk more and more about. When you hear an African talking, then always inquire as to what that African does or has done for the race. Oratory and resolutions do not avail much. If they did, the African would be in a paradise on earth. It may be well to repeat here the saying that elders talk of what they have done, the youth of what they are doing, and fools of what they expect to do. The African race has a rather large share of the latter, of the last mentioned class, you know? And I mean, it's like, it kind of like, you know, I mean, you see it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you kind of, I mean, and of course, I'm not saying, and I mean, obviously, I edited it so it said African instead of Negro, because that's what it used to say, obviously. But I'm not saying, you know, I'm not going to say, hey, you know, we don't need leaders per se. But I know a lot of people would, you know, use the native example, which is, you know, there are too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You know,
yeah.
We need workers, and it's the workers, and the workers, like you put it, the workers should become the leaders, if you will.
Yes.
You know, but what we have today is just a bunch of people who are competing to be the leader without any work being done.
Yes.
You know, and the trouble is that Carter G. Woodson wrote this 80 years ago. So this was something that was being done 80 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, the quote unquote Umar Johnsons of the past and the Tariq Nasheeds of the past, like the quote of today or whatever, were what our ancestors and their ancestors, you know, what our grandparents and their grandparents saw in their lives. You know,
mm-hmm.
and it's part of the trouble of that we're going through as a people is this reality that, you know, we don't have the workers who are doing definite and concrete things, and we have a lot of people who are talking about, you know, or as Carter G. Woodson said, you know, fools who are talking about what they expect to do. You know, I expect to build this, you know, yada yada. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm not calling anybody a fool or anything, but I mean, you know, Carter G. Woodson is pretty much, you know, saying, hey, look, you know, put up or shut up, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, don't, you know, and we don't need race leaders just talking. You get what I'm saying? And of course, you know, like I said, I put this in the book, you know, so it's like anybody who wants to, they can see it. I believe page 11. You know, like I put it really early. Because I used to, like I said, page 10, I used to review this, you know, I used to review this book, if you will, or this pamphlet with a group of individuals for the longest, and I hammered this, you know, into their heads, you know, so that even I could, like, you know, recite a lot of them off the top of my head, because, you know, but that's the kind of thing that's another, you know, that's how I was trying to develop leaders for my organization, you know, where I was like, hey, look, this is what our ancestors said, and you got to humble yourself to the ancestors' wisdom. If you don't understand the ancestors' wisdom, I can explain it to you, you know, because I studied it, but you will get it, you know, and that's like what I put in this book, you know, but I'm saying all this to say that, you know, I would always tell people, look, we need workers, you know, because every time, like, if you have you know, when you do black organizing or whatever, everybody comes in wanting to be the leader,
yes.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
One of the sisters, after I stopped meeting with my organization or whatever, she came later. She said if she never understood something, And one of the things she never understood was, why was I the leader? You know, and it's like that's not it. You know, I mean, I'm the one bringing everything together. You know, but you know, but the whole thing was that, you know, when she came in, she was like, you know, she's fixing to be a leader. You know, but that's another thing that we as a people, that's one of the troubles that we as a people have, is that, you know, we don't even earn the stripes. You know what I mean? Yeah. We don't even like me. You know, me and people I worked with, you know, we had to stand out in the cold or out in the, you know, or in the burning sun, under the, you know, whatever. We had to go out there and get people. But when we went out and got the people who weren't going out to get their own people, they were like, okay, let me run this thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I wasn't, you know what I mean? It's like, we need workers, but our people, you know, a lot, like most of us don't have too much humility. So it's like, when you see Umar Johnson rising as he has, you know, it makes a lot of sense. You know, he's the, you know, like I shouldn't keep going on to this particular director, but I don't really know movies or directors like that, you know. But like, you know, the stars of those big Hollywood movies, you know, they walk around like, you know, like they're, you know, like they're the top, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, but it's like that's what you expect, you know, because everybody else is expecting it. You know, how many people on social media are trying to be where Umar is? You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, like everybody. You know what I mean? So it's like, but at the same time, it's like we have to, you know, get together and because that's what white people do. Just to clarify, I want to say this too. Like anytime you see three white people, one of them is appointed the leader. You know what I mean? At least three white people, one of them is appointed the leader. You know? Mm-hmm. Like when I was in university, we had a stupid school group. It was a stupid school group. There was like four of us. And we still had a vice president, a president, and you know, like it was four people, and we still had a president, a vice president, and you know?
We had the same issue when I was in college as well. 4 or 5 people, everyone held a position, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because white people understand, you know, because they learned that from us. They learned that you have to have a hierarchy, you have to have a leadership, you have to have, you know, all that, you know, chain of command, you know? Mm-hmm. And I tell you, white people have so much, you know, in their chain of command that they, you know, they sometimes mistakenly put black people in the chain of command.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, like sometimes, you know, you got black, you got white police officers answering to black police captains.
Yes.
You know, mm-hmm. Only because they got so many leadership. But then we as the people, we just say, we technically have, like, everybody want to be a leader. So then we say, I don't want, no, you know, they say we don't need any leaders. But they're saying that in order to be a leader, you know?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, we don't need no leaders. I'll lead myself. You know, anybody want to come with me? You know, anybody want to come with me? And, you know, they ain't never doing nothing. You know, they ain't never doing nothing. They probably ordering pizza or something. You know, okay. You know, like, ain't nothing.
You mentioned Carter G. Woodson a few minutes ago. I just want to give a shout out to Carl Hezekiah. He wrote a nice book review of The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson on the Bitter Medicine book club blog site. So if you want to check that out, go to www.bittermedicineblogs, all one word, .com. And if you go to the book club section, you'll see Carl's article where he reviews The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. So shout out to Carl Hezekiah. He's also one of the members of our think tank. So yeah. So, you know, when we talk about a guy like Umar Johnson, for example, his big thing, and at this point, kind of his Achilles heel, is this school that he wants or wanted to build.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of favor from people in our society, in a black community, for this school because it's a good idea. But as you've pointed out to me in the past, and you know, Booker T. Washington kind of wrote the book on how to how to develop and design a school, even talking about how to raise funds for the school.
Exactly.
In your book, again, I'm going to go back to it. Your book talks about the curriculum. And in our think tank, we've discussed that we need to start focusing on a kind of an African curriculum. On page 186, I just want to have the listeners hear this. When you talk about the African curriculum, you talk about attributes to develop. And I like this. A lot of this resonated with me. I think it's important that we think along these lines. Some of the attributes to develop are strength, the ability to exert physical force, physique, the ability to withstand physical force, agility, the ability to move with haste, dexterity, the ability to move with coordination, intelligence, the ability to understand reality, wisdom, the ability to discern reality, discipline, the ability to commit oneself to a task, and charm, the ability to commit others to a task.
Exactly. Yeah.
When we look at the state of affairs going on with black so-called leadership, they're missing they have some of these attributes, but they're missing a whole lot of the attributes. So a lot of these guys have charm.
Yeah.
Right? But do they have discipline? You know, I have been a big proponent of Dr. Umar Johnson. I like what he has to say. I like the way he carries himself. The thing about me is that I'm not fooled by preachers. I gave that up a long time ago, right? Being fooled by preachers. But, you know, so I see him for what he is and for who he is. He's a flawed human being, as we all are. But some of his flaws when it comes to actually being a leader are a little bit too much to reconcile, to be honest. And I've on the Bitter Medicine podcast page on Facebook and on Twitter, I've defended Dr. Umar heavily. But it's coming to the point now, especially when I start to read some of your work and other works on leadership in the black community, I've got to send this message to Dr. Umar. You sent out an apology on behalf of black people to Umar and Tariq Nasheed, but I have to send this message to Umar as well. From the Bitter Medicine podcast, the message is, if you say you're going to do it, go ahead and do it. And have the resolve to take on any backlash, have the resolve to take on and deal with any questioning from the people. Dr. Umar's school is a great idea. I don't know if he has the skills himself, I doubt it, to really make it come to fruition. But at the very least, Dr. Umar, you need to start to address the people properly, especially those people who have donated to the school. You need to address them. You need to be transparent. I think that's a big quality that leaders should have, especially black leaders. And we need to understand, really, are you really going to have a African or an Afrocentric curriculum that builds upon principles like the ones you mentioned here? Oni, can you tell the listeners what led you to these attributes to develop when you talk about an African curriculum?
Well, I mean, those attributes. Well, that's more just how do you make a like those are the attributes of a character or characters in general. Like of a person. If you were to describe a person, you know, holistically, you know, how would you describe them? You know, in any context, in a universal context, and so, you know, and it's large. It's fairly borrowed but renovated. You know, So strength is like a characteristic of a person. You know, agility, dexterity, physique, intelligence, wisdom. These are if you were to compare individuals, right? You could compare them on these attributes, but it's also, but to me, it's also, those are the attributes that we as people should be developing for ourselves. But if you're going to make a school for children or a school for anybody, you should be developing all 8 of these attributes. Mostly, and I highlight this mostly because usually the only attributes being, developed in a school might be, well, none of them really, but it's mostly wisdom or intelligence,
Right.
Or it's supposed to be wisdom or intelligence, but that leaves out so much of the character to the point where you will have, like, for instance, kind of physique is really important, but you will have people who graduate with PhDs, but they're like overweight, or like heavily overweight, or like obese or something, or morbidly obese, or they're unable to do certain things, or you have like the quote unquote, the weakling, the a lot of people, like myself included, we wanted to be smart or whatever, in the school sense, in the academic sense. So we kind of were like, we don't need to do any sports. You know what I mean? We don't need to be strong. We don't need to fight. We don't need to lift up anything. But it's like, if we're African, we're African people, and as African people, we also, you have to be strong. You have to be a warrior. So it's like the attributes, encapsulate, the 8 different attributes that people can develop for themselves that also encapsulate how, like the universality of our experiences, as opposed to, what we're taught, which is, school is just academics, which is just, intelligence or wisdom, and this is more like, hey, but you also have to develop your relational skills, your relationship skills, your ability to be charming, but your ability to discipline yourself, to resist somebody else's charms. You know what I mean? Because right now we have, like I said, we have educated people who, or quote unquote educated people, miseducated people who cannot resist the charms of others. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or for instance, like we see, we have these people who are like, because not everybody following Umar Johnson is whatever somebody, whatever people might describe them as. A lot of them are very learned. A lot of them are very, so on and so forth. And it's the same with, any black person in the past, whether it was Marcus Garvey, Carter G. Woodson and J.E. Rogers were following Marcus Garvey, along with, the rabble-rousers. But then the same with W.B. Du Bois, not just scholars were following him, anybody, So it's like, we have to realize that you have to develop your own discipline. You have to develop your own charm. You have to develop your own, and charm is really important for getting things done.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very important. And actually, I later in the book, I describe, ways to be more charming, just because, charming is really important. If you're trying to do the revolutionary work, you gotta be able to, you gotta do what Omar is doing, essentially. But you also want to, put in work, So it's like, so you have to, there's a lot that goes with it. And so that's the reason why I have those 8. But those 8 are for, when we talk about building schools, because, I've been asked about, how, what's a black curriculum that we could use. And it's like, regardless of what you use, these are the things you want to develop in any student, in order that they come out of that experience fit and better and able to do the work that needs to be done. We don't need armchair revolutionaries. We don't need people sitting back. We don't need, people out of shape talking about, oh, we're gonna fight we're gonna go to war. You can't even, you know what I'm saying? You can't walk up the stairs. You know what I mean? This is not, we got to be serious. This is a serious endeavor, and you want to get out of school and be healthier. You want to be out of school. You want to be more fit. You want to get out of school, be able to see reality for what it is, because like I said, the brother named Maddox, apparently before he went to school, his mother told him, don't come back an educated fool.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what happens with, us as a people. A lot of us become educated fools. We can't see reality, And Carter G. Woodson, like you said, it's a great book review, but it's also a really great book. And it's like it's such a good book that I couldn't, I wanted to put a lot of what he said into my pamphlet, but I just couldn't. It would have taken up too much space, So I just, but I highly recommend the book. But one of the things that he said about himself was that it took him maybe, I can't remember the exact number, but it could have been 20 years to unlearn everything he learned from Harvard.
I think what I mean? 25, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it took him so many years to unlearn everything he learned from Harvard, and that's where, that's where we are, where we get this quote unquote, we're not really getting the intelligence wisdom, but we're told it's just all school is just that academics, And if you fail at academics, you fail at school, and if you're good at academics, you're great at school. But then you still, there's so much lacking, and I had to give a definition of these terms, and I said reality is the importance. You have to be able to discern reality, and you have to be able to interpret, understand reality, and that's something that we're not even, reality, and that's another thing too, because the ancient Africans have told us what reality is, so reality is the laws that govern nature and the causes from which they flow. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So to say that we have to understand and discern the laws that govern nature and the causes from which they flow, So and yeah.
So to the people listening to this show right now, I want to say to you, I want you guys to use these 8 attributes on page 186 of the Pro-Black Compendium. I want you guys to sit down with these 8 attributes that I just read off and Oni was just elaborating on. And I want you to ask yourself, are the black so-called leaders, or the so-called leaders in the black community, do they have these attributes? And I'm pretty sure you will find yourself saying no. They may have 3 of them, or 1 or 2 of them. But do they have all of them? I mean, because, for those of you who subscribe to the Bible, the Bible says that an unstable man is unstable in all his ways. And that's a nice proverb, because you gotta ask yourself, if you're charming, but you don't have the ability to withstand physical force, your physique is off, or you're intelligent, but you can't discern reality, are you really fit for leadership when it comes to the black community? And I think you hear what our answer is here, and the answer is no. So when we talk about vetting leadership, as we've discussed in this show today, there are several steps that we need to go through as a group, and we need to put people from our group through if they're going to ascend to this position of leadership. We got to vet them. They have to have these attributes already developed within them. They need to pass through an organization where these attributes will be displayed, where they work themselves up through the ranks, showing that they're for the people. And this is what we have to demand, not only from our leaders, but we have to demand it from ourselves, because each of us needs to be a leader as well. Mm-hmm. So, Oni, before we go, what are your final words on what's going on as far as leadership in the black society, as far as current events with these conscious beefs, with this hip-hopification of consciousness? What are your final thoughts to the people? What message would you really like to get across, not only to the Bitter Medicine podcast fans, but fans of the pro-black perspective?
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, everybody needs to be a leader particularly everybody, willing to do the work, everybody willing to, because we could use a lot more leaders if they're quality, virtuous people, and as long as you have, like I said, a hierarchy, it doesn't matter how many leaders you have in a sense, but in particular, we have to understand that a leader and a worker are very similar, and so, we really want more workers. We want everybody to be workers and leaders in that sense, or potential leaders in that stuff, or ready to get the mantle of leadership, whenever, so that, like we can't just cut off the head of a snake, or we can't just cut off the head and then, and the body dies. We need to, we can't be like snakes where you cut off the head of the snake and the body dies, but like a worm where you cut off the head and then you got two worms or something,
Right.
But that's where we are, where it's like, but that's pretty much what I want to say. I want to tell people, I want people to, get into organizations, and have those organizations, because the organization is a leader, if you will.
Yes.
The organization has a leader, but the whole body itself is a leader. It's organizing a people in general. Like classic example, the police force. The police force has its, regular officer, right? Now, I had this regular overseer, right? But then those overseers answer to the captain. The captain answers to the sheriff. The sheriff answers to the mayor. The mayor answers to the governor, let's say. I don't know. The governor answers to the president or whatever. There's a lot of people in between, sure. But the idea is that there's a hierarchy, for one. But overall, the police, if you will, are structured such that they organize the whole populace. Because like I said in the other show, the police are they're organizing black people. So all the police officers are quote unquote leaders, if you will, even though they have a hierarchy structure. So like when you said that all of us need to be leaders, it's also to say all of us need to be organized in organizations.
Right.
And we need, and it's the same with all these organizations, whether it's a business, the business, quote unquote, does marketing and it organizes you to go out and go get your McDonald's or whatever, or the school, the school, the teacher organizes the classroom so that you could, get your miseducation going, so it's everything is organizing you. And so black people are technically already in organizations, but we're being misorganized by another people. And we have to get out of that misorganization and organize ourselves, because Marcus Garvey said, the greatest weapon used against the African is misorganization,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to realize that the best weapon that we have for our people is organization. And Kwame Ture says, organize, 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 and I mean, not to, and I don't want to be that down, but it's like, if we want to talk about leadership, we want to talk about working for our people. If we want to talk about what's the difference between lip service and noise, bravery and service, or we want to talk about what's the difference between boasting at the parade, boasting at the march, and being brave on the battlefield, it is us going through and doing the work that needs to be done in order to get our people moving forward. Because otherwise, we're just paying people to talk about things so that they can continue to talk about them, so that we can continue to pay them to talk about it.
Right.
And it's not,
mm-hmm.
and it's something that's been going on for the last, century. And it's just not, and it wasn't efficient when Carter G. Woodson wrote about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't efficient when Carter G. Woodson wrote about it, but we're still doing it 100 years later.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Well,
that's all I wanted to say. Except for thank you to everybody who's listening and watching and enjoying the podcast.
Yeah. So let me just give a few business shout outs, starting with my own, I guess, which is the Bitter Medicine podcast. please support us in increasing the visibility of our platform. We have a GoFundMe. You can go check out the GoFundMe. It's only really to cover the cost of improving our broadcast, improving our marketing of the show to get ourselves more visible so that we can have more solutionaries, more people who offer solutions similar to Oni does here, to be able to appear on our show and for us to be able to get the show out there to more listeners. Also, I would like to give a free business shout out to Stephanie Renee's salon. It's located on 1614 West Main Street in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Her number is 269-459-6535. She uses natural hair products, and they're conveniently located inside Cali Beauty. Again, the number is 269. The number is 269-459-6563. That's Stephanie Renee's salon. So please support Stephanie Renee. That was the free business shout out that we're trying to promote in every podcast this year. If you have a black business, please send us a message at bitter.medicine.podcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment on the Bitter Medicine podcast page on Facebook. Let us know your business, the contact information, and we'll give you a free shout out on the next podcast. Oni, shout out your podcast and your social media.
Oh, yeah, my podcast is Pro Black Perspective, and my social media is Onitaset, Onitaset. You can find me on Twitter or Tumblr, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Oni's show, the Pro Black Perspective, again, is about giving black solutions to black problems, something that we so greatly need right now. So thank you for listening to the Bitter Medicine podcast, everyone. We will be back soon. Oh, by the way, we will be doing shows twice weekly now. So make sure to like and subscribe our YouTube channel to get notifications as to when we have new podcasts. You can expect those twice weekly from now on. And you can also find them on whatever podcast catcher that you use, Podbean, Castbox, iTunes, etc. Okay, until next time, this has been the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.